All right, so here we got a 2000 Yamaha Vstar 650 Classic. Gonna be removing the rear wheel and then greasing the splines. As you probably know, that needs to be done. As you can see, I'm part of the way through, but I figured I'd make a video on it. First step, coming in, unscrew this bolt. It's 12 millimeter. Remove the pylon seat, pull that off, and then there's another 12 right on the back of the actual seat. Pops right off. Then we'd come down here on both sides. We'll just loosen this one halfway, remove the rear one on both sides, and it'll pop up like a trunk. I found that it sits by itself, but tension is being placed on this wire. So I kind of let it pull against this bungee cord and yarn that I just tied to the frame. Little setup, not really super sturdy, but it works. Also important, jack it up. That's the stand over there, but it's not on anything. Jacked it up off the ground so my rear wheel does rotate freely. It's off the ground. Got this jack from Home Depot, 50 bucks. No biggie, but I know you can also make them using some wood from Home Depot as well for probably a bit cheaper, but I figured this was better. Yeah, so once we have this pulled up, we're gonna come around. Oh, first actually, loosen the rear axle nut. It was actually quite difficult for me. I just had to use big torque wrench, and it was almost, I had to use the weight of the bike. It was almost lifting it up as I tried to loosen, but it eventually started to move. So maybe if you have an impact wrench or something like that, it'll go better. I believe it was a 19 millimeter. I did use a 3/4 socket because I don't have a 19 millimeter socket, and the 19 millimeter wrench was not doing the job, but it is a 19. Yeah. Then we'll come around to the rear brake side. Get down here. We're gonna wanna remove this bolt, and I just put it back on there for safekeeping, but remove it out of there. Loosen this one so we can drop that down. Pretty simple. Then we will remove the rear brake adjuster nut, which will be on the back right here. Lefty-loosey off. I believe it's a 12 millimeter. Pops off. Then there's a spring on here, and this is in there, and we just need to pop the rod off. I found that it's very helpful to press the rear brake, and that will move the rod forward, and it's much easier to pop it off of there and then just pop this piece off. I just marked it to see which side is on, but I believe either side will work well. And now that we are there, we can start to take off the rear wheel. Our next step is to remove panel A, as is referenced in the manual, which is right here. It is just 4 Allen bolts. 1, 2, 3, 4, right there. You pull those out. There's some extra little ones on top. I don't know what they're for, but didn't need to unscrew them. It'll just pop right off, and then we have access to this. All right, so we're just removing these 4 nuts next. They're gonna be a 14 millimeter. They do say 10 on them, but mine at least are torqued down pretty tight. Try to use my torque wrench, yeah. So I initially tried to use just a normal socket wrench. It was a little too tight. So now that we've got those 4 bolts out and our axle is loosened, I might need to loosen mine a little bit more. We're gonna pull the rear wheel back, supporting the drive shaft, and we're also gonna be pulling the brake assembly all as one assembly. So axle, drive shaft, drum brakes, and tire and wheel are all gonna come as one. and it does make note to support the drive shaft. As you know, there's final gear oil inside of here. From what I've seen, it shouldn't spill anywhere, but probably keep it upright position. I have a piece of cardboard set up just to place it on, and I'll probably lean it against something because it will pull out once we get this off. But for now, we've jacked it up. I'll move this wood out of the way and then just pull it back as one, and yeah, we'll see how that goes. So supporting this and the rear drum brake, we're just gonna slide everything back and it'll fall into that notch. As you can see, our splines, I'm not sure if you can see the splines, are out over there. So everything should just pull off now. I'll try to keep it all in one assembly. Yeah. And so it'll all stay in one assembly because of the axle nuts still being in. So we're gonna lube everything up. There's 4 acorn nuts right here that we're gonna pull off to gain access inside. Come off. Oh, there's also 4 washers. We pulled these 4 acorn nuts off here. That allowed us to pull the shaft off. As you can see, this one's looking pretty dry, but our splines in here, there's a spring right here that may come out, may not, but yeah, in here it's greased, but we definitely want to put some more on there. We want to grease it with or lube it with some sort of moly paste that's greater than 60%. Best that I could find was the Loctite LB812. You can have this part number or one that's like 50481 or something like that. They're both the same thing, but the most important part is greater than 60% moly. That is what they apply in the factory, and should last, according to what I've seen online, 100,000 miles. But because this bike is newer to me and I have not seen the condition of the splines before, I wanted to take them off, lube it up, and have that peace of mind, because there was some problems with Yamaha, the manufacturer itself, not putting enough lube on the splines from the factory, leading to final drives going out or the spline stripping. And sometimes if you take your bike into a mechanic to have the rear tire changed, they may wipe the lube off and replace it with something that is not 60% moly. So to me, this bike looks like it was lubed with that sort of moly lithium grease that I was talking about beforehand, rather than the 60% or greater content of moly grease that we're going to be using. So you can see when I open this up, this is what we want it to look like. This obviously is withheld. Bike only has 6,000 miles on it and it's 24 years old, so hasn't been driven hard. I don't know how long this will hold up, but it's good we're getting in there and lubing it with what should be on there. Perfect. So got the spring pretty cleaned out. I'm just gonna set it to the side. So the main reason we're doing this is because there's a problem with the male going in here. As it turns, it's not greased enough and will strip out these splines either on the male or female end, and then the bike will not move. And you cannot buy these parts individually, apparently. It's more like you have to buy the entire final drive shaft. So I think it's a pretty good idea to do. And this is gonna take me, what, like 2 hours? So, easy maintenance you can do by yourself, just some tools and some grease. We do have splines that go in here, so we'll just try to get some of this grease out. So now, if I remove this piece, you can see we also have some splines in here that look to be greased. So I will wipe those off and grease them as well. And we're just gonna kind of work it in. So, greased it up. I would say this is plenty. Not sure if the rubber boot needs it, but it did have grease on there. So, you know, we just painted it in. Got grease in between each splines. And we're gonna paint the other end as well. So, I also painted the inside very lightly. So, drop it on. Go around. But yeah, it's lubed up pretty well inside there. I'd say that's plenty. Plus we have the male side lubricated, so just slide, find where it connects. Perfect. Slide this back on. Make sure you put those nuts or the washers back on the acorn nuts. I just had to pull mine off and put them back on because I forgot about that. But now that we've done that, can grease this female inside. And then place the axle nut back on. Easier. We had it sitting here before. So, yeah. Slides in perfect. Alright. So now we've got it on that notch again. Perfect. So we got it back on. You just kinda gotta support the final drive. Make sure it goes back in the correct spot into the female, and then work these 14mm bolts into their slots, and I believe that would be holding it securely. So our torque for these is going to be 90 Nm, which comes out to 66.38, 66.4 foot-pounds. Place this tension on. So these need to be tightened to 20 nanometers, which is 14.75 foot-pounds. All right, so you should be able to hold this with a 14 on the other side, and then a 12 on the side that we're tightening. That's the spec there. I'll get this one to spec also. Perfect. Alright, so I just reinstalled cover A, just the 4 bolts, line up, set it in, screw them in, pretty simple. So 92 Nm is 67.8 foot-pounds. Stopped in gear. Sweet. Now this, lower gently back into place. We'll just let it rest on the tire for now. on. Spot for it to click into. First gear, the tire spins, meaning that the drive shaft is connected. Everything is good to go. Rear brake, when depressed, will stop the rotation of the tire. I might adjust it via the manual spec after, but everything's looking good.